In 34 seconds, the Hindenburg stopped being the future of passenger travel and became the reason that future died. The airship was coming in to land at Lakehurst in 1937 when fire took over the frame. In less than a minute, a machine built to make transatlantic lighter-than-air travel feel grand, modern, and safe was on the ground in flames. 35 of the 97 people aboard were killed. One member of the ground crew was killed too, and the damage did not stop with the wreckage. The disaster ended transatlantic commercial travel in lighter-than-air vessels. That is why the Hindenburg story is bigger than one famous crash. It is a corporate graveyard story about a public promise collapsing in public. The Hindenburg had not only carried people, it had carried a belief that huge airships could be a serious way to cross the Atlantic. The fire did not leave that belief wounded. It made the belief look impossible. The question is not just how an airship burned, the question is how a whole category of passenger travel could lose its future in the time it takes to read a short paragraph. Before the fire, the Hindenburg had to sell one very specific belief, that a giant airship could carry people across the Atlantic as a prestige form of travel. The promise was not only transportation, it was scale, comfort, spectacle, and technological confidence floating above the ocean. That matters because passenger travel is never just a machine, it is a trust contract. People step aboard because they believe the operator can repeat the trip safely, again and again, with enough confidence that the risk fades into the background. The Hindenburg's public image depended on that feeling. It looked enormous, controlled, and impressive. Every calm view of the ship helped the promise. Every clean arrival could make the next passenger feel the idea was normal. That is the quiet work prestige does. It turns an extraordinary machine into something people can imagine using. At Lakehurst, that image had to perform one of the most ordinary tasks in travel: arrive. A landing should be the boring ending of a successful trip. It should make the machine disappear into routine. Instead, the landing became the scene where the whole promise was tested in front of witnesses, cameras, and history. The strange thing about the Hindenburg is that the same qualities that made it impressive also made its failure impossible to hide. A small product can fail quietly. A giant passenger airship cannot. Its size was part of the pitch. Its visibility was part of the magic. Its arrival was an event before anything went wrong. That is why the pre-disaster images still matter. The calm shots of the airship at Lakehurst do not look like the setup to a corporate failure. They look like proof that the future has already arrived. But that proof was fragile, because it depended on the public reading size as safety instead of danger. The business needed people to see the vast body in the sky and feel wonder, not vulnerability. It needed the public spectacle to reassure them. If the spectacle stayed calm, it supported the sale. If it turned violent, it became evidence for the opposite side. Once the meaning flipped, the image could not be repaired by a memo, a technical explanation, or a quiet rebrand. The airship had been sold as a spectacle. When it failed, the failure became the spectacle too. Here's the mechanism this story can support without pretending to solve what the local sources do not prove. We do not need a courtroom answer for the first spark to understand the business consequence. The supported story is a trust collapse. A passenger system can survive delays, repairs, and even bad press if customers still believe the basic promise. It has a much harder time surviving when the clearest public evidence becomes a vehicle burning and falling in 34 seconds. The Hindenburg disaster had a visual force that ordinary statistics could not match. People did not have to imagine the danger as an abstract risk inside an engineering report. They could see the promise fail. That matters because trust is not rebuilt with the same tools that built spectacle. A polished image can create confidence slowly, trip after trip. A disaster image can destroy it at once. The public does not need a full technical file to change its mind about whether a journey feels acceptable. That is the fatal business problem. A prestige transport category was asking people to believe in comfort and control, while the defining image now said speed, fire, and helplessness. The crack was not that every lighter-than-air vessel vanished in one physical moment. The crack was reputational. Transatlantic commercial passenger airship travel needed confidence to keep existing. It needed passengers to look at a huge floating vessel and think, this is a civilized way to cross an ocean. After Lakehurst, the strongest image attached to that idea was no longer elegance in the sky. It was the Hindenburg burning. That is a brutal reversal for any business model. A luxury promise cannot stay luxury if its signature memory becomes wreckage. A technology confidence story cannot stay confident if the most famous evidence says the system can fail faster than the public can process. Imagine the opposite kind of failure. Private, slow, technical, and fixable. That might leave room for patience. Lakehurst gave the public the opposite. It was visible, fast, and final in feeling. It created a simple mental shortcut. Passenger airship equals disaster image. And this is where the scale of the disaster matters. The Hindenburg did not have to destroy every future plan by itself. It only had to destroy the emotional reason passengers would trust the category. So return to the landing. In 1937 at Lakehurst, the Hindenburg was not in some hidden test site where failure could be contained. It was in the visible part of its job. It was arriving. That is what makes the turn so sharp. A vehicle built around long-distance passenger confidence reached the moment that should have confirmed the trip. and instead the story inverted. Fire broke out, the airship burned and crashed while landing. The whole destruction was compressed into 34 seconds. That number is almost too short for the size of what it ended. 34 seconds is not enough time for a boardroom to react, for a brand to respond, or for a traveler to revise their belief carefully. It is an instant public verdict. There is no slow transition from admiration to doubt. The viewer goes from arrival to catastrophe in one breath. That compression is part of the horror. It denies the audience the comfort of gradual failure. Before the disaster, the Hindenburg scale could make the airship feel magnificent. During the disaster, the same scale made the fire feel unavoidable. The human cost is what keeps the story from becoming just a business lesson. 35 of the 97 people aboard were killed, and one ground crew member died as well. Those numbers are important because they cut two ways. They show the disaster was deadly, not merely embarrassing or expensive, but they also remind us that the event was not a simple image of total disappearance. There were people aboard who survived. There was a ground crew doing dangerous work outside the airship. The disaster reached beyond the passengers and crew inside the vessel. It touched the people on the ground who were part of making arrival possible. That detail widens the frame. A passenger system is supported by everyone around it, not only the people buying tickets or riding inside. When the system failed, the harm crossed that boundary too. For viewers, that makes the scene harder to reduce to machinery. There are lives inside the promise. That makes the 34-second timeline even harsher. In less than a minute, the Hindenburg became a human tragedy, a visual record, and a commercial warning. The deaths gave the story moral weight, the speed gave it business force. Then came the consequence that puts this episode in corporate graveyard territory. Transatlantic commercial travel in lighter-than-air vessels ended. That is the part people often compress into a trivia answer, but it is the real payoff of the story. One landing disaster did not merely damage one famous airship. It helped turn an entire passenger travel proposition from glamorous to unacceptable. The business logic is simple and severe. If your product is a public confidence machine, the public image matters. The Hindenburg had been able to represent prestige, comfort, and technological confidence. After the disaster, the same name represented fire at Lakehurst, 35 dead aboard, 1 dead on the ground, and a collapse finished in 34 seconds. You can replace equipment, you can investigate causes, you can argue that one event should not define every future trip, but a passenger market still needs people willing to step aboard. Without that willingness, the route, the vehicle, and the glamour become stranded ideas. You cannot keep selling the old promise when the public has a new picture that defeats it. The category did not only lose hardware, it lost permission to be trusted. That is why the disaster still feels modern. Companies still sell spectacle as evidence. They point to size, polish, speed, novelty, and confidence, and ask the public to treat those signals as proof that the system underneath is safe enough to trust. The Hindenburg warns that spectacle cuts both ways. The bigger the promise, the bigger the reversal when the proof turns against it. A quiet failure can be explained, absorbed, and sometimes forgotten. A public failure with a clear image can become the whole story. In this case, the strongest archive material is also the worst possible advertisement. The airship that once showed what transatlantic passenger airships could be became the clip and the still image people used to remember why that world ended. The before and after contrast is almost too clean, calm scale on one side, burning collapse on the other. That contrast does more than illustrate a disaster. It teaches the audience which version of the story to remember. It turns memory into a market force. That is not just bad publicity, that is a category losing control of its own meaning. So the answer to the opening question is not that 34 seconds mechanically killed every lighter-than-air idea. It is that those 34 seconds destroyed the trust structure around transatlantic passenger airships. The Hindenburg was supposed to make the future visible. At Lakehurst, it made the risk visible instead. The disaster turned a prestige travel image into public evidence against the business model. It linked one name to a landing fire, a crash, 35 deaths among the 97 aboard, 1 death on the ground, and the end of transatlantic commercial lighter-than-air travel. That chain is why the title is not exaggerating. The fire ended more than a flight. It ended the public confidence that the flight category needed in order to continue. The central reversal is clean. The vehicle that was meant to prove control became proof of lost control, and because the event was so visible, the old confidence could not quietly regrow in the same shape. The public had already been given a replacement image. Once that confidence was gone, the old promise could not simply resume as if the world had not watched it burn. That is the corporate graveyard lesson of the Hindenburg. A company, a technology, or a travel category can spend years building an image of control, but a single public failure can rewrite what every old image means. The Hindenburg's calm scale became a before picture. The Lakehurst fire became the after picture. And the phrase 34 seconds to ruin works because the ruin was not only physical, it was reputational, commercial, and permanent for transatlantic passenger airships. The next time a technology looks inevitable because it is huge, polished, and spectacular, remember the trap in this story. Spectacle can sell trust. But if the spectacle becomes the failure, it can also bury the business faster than anyone inside it can explain. That is why the Hindenburg is still remembered not just as a disaster, but as the moment a travel dream lost the right to call itself the future. The final lesson is simple. When a business sells confidence, the public image is not decoration, it is part of the product.